Asha, Mimi, Elie, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. So I guess we're going to continue to talk about the Jeffrey Epstein case. All sorts of issues arising from it. I can't think of a better group of people to talk about it. But I thought first, before we get into what is going on today or what happened last week, or the possibility of a pardon, or why the Deputy Attorney General is going and interviewing her personally for 2 days with or without an FBI agent, before we get to any of that, can we just remind people what it is that Ghislane Maxwell is not only alleged to have done, but was convicted of, what the evidence was, generally speaking, why she was convicted, why she got 20 years in prison? Mimi, do you want to start with that so we understand what we're talking about here?
Ghislane Maxwell was convicted in 2022 in the Southern District of New York of conspiracy to entice minors to travel and engage in illegal sex acts, conspiracy to transport minors to participate in illegal sex acts, transporting minors, etc. I mean, you get the drift. Basically, conspiring, aiding, facilitating a sex trafficking operation that was mainly run by and for the benefit of Epstein and others, I guess, depending on who you ask.
On the list, the people on the list, Mimi.
The people on the list, right, exactly. And she was, I'll talk about the conduct a little bit more in a second, but, I think it's important to point out that she was sentenced to 20 years by Judge Nathan, Allison Nathan of the Southern District, 240 months, which is, a serious sentence. And this is the judge who presided over the trial, so who saw her conduct up close in as much detail as, anyone could. And what Maxwell's role was, I think this is kind of intuitive, and so you don't need to be a prosecutor or a lawyer to understand this, but when you're trying to get young girls or young women to engage in something that they otherwise might not do, like have sex with some older man repeatedly, or, without getting too graphic, engage in sexual conduct that isn't sort of, based on their own personal relationships that exist already with other peers. You need to earn their trust, right? And we know that sex traffickers target, in particular, young women and girls who are vulnerable, who are going through, puberty, who are going through hormonal changes, who may have things going on at home. And there's always in these kinds of rings a sort of mother figure who earns their trust, who shows them compassion, actually, initially, and brings them into the circle and lets them think that they can have a better life through this person. That was Maxwell. And testimony after testimony showed that she was the groomer, the recruiter, and she was very, very good at it. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's important as we talk about what's going to happen to her and why people are talking to her. Just one more follow-up question for Elie and Asha, based on what Mimi said. Is there anything that you are aware of in the record or in the appeal or anything at all that should cause us to feel empathetic towards Ghislane Maxwell or sympathetic towards her, or to date, anything that suggests that she is worthy of clemency or forgiveness or a reduction in her sentence? Asha?
I would just say zero that I am aware of. And I just want to add to what Mimi said. I'm not sure if this was in the trial record, but I have seen witness statements that she participated in the sexual abuse herself. So it wasn't just that she was recruiting these. She was actually later on, along with Jeffrey Epstein, also engaging in these sexual acts with these young girls.
Okay. So, Elie, I want to ask you about her appeal, but do we have a consensus here that Maxwell richly deserved her sentence of 20 years?
Oh my God, yes. It was the max. I mean, I would assume it would have been more if there was a higher max than 20. And if I can just add, I mean, I agree with Asha. I was going to say nothing mitigating in Ghislane Maxwell's favor. And we should call this out because there is a slowly growing, subtle, becoming less subtle effort to soften some of the edges around who Ghislaine Maxwell is. I mean, you've seen the clips of certain, pretty far right media figures. Someone said I don't even want to give it too much credence, but she might be a victim. Even last night, I was on air with CNN. Chris Sununu started saying, oh, she could be the Rosetta Stone. Like, I don't trust this woman as far as I could throw her. Are you kidding me? And
we're going to get to whether she can cooperate or not. Absolutely, okay, in a moment.
Yeah.
But she made an appeal, as is her right, to the appropriate appellate court, Second Circuit, and she lost. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She is working on, or has she filed a petition with the Supreme Court for certiorari?
She has a cert petition that was just filed with the U.S. Supreme Court, and I'll lay out the issue. So this has nothing to do actually with her factual guilt or non-guilt. There's no genuine appellate issue relating to the trial itself or the proof against her. It's a technical issue, but it's actually an interesting issue. I give her a slightly better chance than the average litigant of getting to the Supreme Court. So back in 07-08, the Southern District of Florida, U.S. Attorney's Office, prosecutes Jeffrey Epstein, gives him an insane sweetheart deal. I know Asha's going to dig into that in a minute. In addition to all the crazy benefits they give Jeffrey Epstein, there is a provision I have never used. I've never even heard of. Tell me, have you guys ever heard of a provision saying none of your co-conspirators will be prosecuted? Mimi saying no. I mean,
no, that's not how it works. It's not how it works.
There's probably, 50 years, if not more, of prosecutorial experience on this call and FBI experience. And
I guess possibly. Have you ever heard of an occasion, Elie, where a particular target, this I believe maybe sometimes happens, where a target will say, I want it to be understood that you're not going to arrest my wife, you're not going to arrest my son, a family member.
Yeah.
But that's it.
We'll do that.
Yeah. We'll do that. Specific carve out, but not blanket.
This included people unknown to the prosecution.
This deal says it lists 4 co-conspirators by name, not Ghislaine Maxwell, but it also says and any others. So it's like anyone who ever went near Jeffrey Epstein gets a pass. Okay, fast forward. So that's 08. 2020 comes along. The SDNY then indicts Ghislaine Maxwell. And she argues both in the district court and the Court of Appeals, hang on a second. I was told back in Florida, we were told that we would not be prosecuted as part of the Epstein deal. And the question then is, if one district, in this case, the Southern District of Florida, makes a deal, is that binding on another district, in this case, the SDNY? Now, there's a separate question. I don't even think this type of deal is enforceable by a non-defendant, by an outside party. Put that aside. Maxwell's arguing they're all DOJ, and if one district makes me a deal, you can't have 93 other districts come in and say, but we're charging you, because that would lead to mayhem. That has been rejected. And Preet, I'm proud to say the leading case so far in the Second Circuit,
I was waiting for you to get to this.
Is United States versus Angelo Prisco, a case prosecuted. Your name is on the indictment. I was the prosecutor on the case. And what happened in this case was Angelo Prisco was a Genovese family capo, powerful guy. He's dead now. DNJ, the District of New Jersey, God bless him, gave him a very softball deal. They let him plead out to an extortion only, and they said, you, Angelo Prisco, will not be prosecuted for anything else by this district, New Jersey. We come along 2 years later. We develop a murder case. We charge him with murder and racketeering. He gets convicted, but he says, hold on. I was made this promise by DNJ. You can't have SDNY come along and charge me later. And that was rejected by the Second Circuit. And so now DOJ, in trying to uphold Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction, is citing our case as their leading precedent. But I will say there's a circuit split here. There actually are other circuits who have said, nah, you can't do that. You can't have some other district come along later and charge. So that to me gives it a more than the usual 3% chance of any given case being taken by the Supreme Court. I'm not saying it's 50%, but it's more than 3%.
But even if it were, let's say we were still in Florida, I mean, there's a strong argument that the original agreement isn't even enforceable as to Maxwell.
I want to bring Asha in just 1 second. Asha, I want you to talk about the corrupt nature of the prior deal and anything else. But just on this point for 1 second, people might be asking the question, isn't it the case that if someone gets prosecuted in District A and pleads guilty, that District B cannot later charge that person for the same conduct because of something called double jeopardy? And it doesn't require some kind of understanding within the Justice Department, right? Isn't that a basic fact?
Yes, but that's because it would be for the same crime.
Yeah. I just want to be clear for people. Someone commits, crimes A, B, and C in a district and pleads guilty to them, those crimes cannot be charged later in another district. There's an open question that we're talking about. If someone it pleads guilty to crimes A, B, and C, but then gets sort of coverage for crimes D, E, and F, then there's a question about whether jeopardy attaches or not. And it's certainly the case that with respect to A, B, C, D, E, and F, if another district comes up with crimes, I'm going to run out of letters of the alphabet, H, I, J, K, with different victims and a different scheme, that is totally fair play. Fair, Asha?
That's fair. And I also want to just highlight it. We call it a sweetheart plea deal, but this was not a plea deal. This was a non-prosecution agreement, meaning that they agreed not to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein. So I'll talk a little bit about it, but just at the outset, to kind of dovetail on what Elie said, I do think it's important to understand that if the Supreme Court, or if anyone is on board with the idea that Ghislane Maxwell should not have been prosecuted by the Southern District of New York because of this non-prosecution agreement from the Southern District of Florida, they are also conceding that Jeffrey Epstein should never have been prosecuted also, because he was the main person. So you're basically saying that he should have never been prosecuted, that frankly, he should be alive today. So
maybe that's why they fired Maurene Comey, because she wrongly prosecuted Jeffrey Epstein. Is that a theory?
I mean, I think it's important to understand that that is the implication of suggesting that, that Ghislane Maxwell was somehow railroaded here. You are then implicitly defending Epstein himself.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That argument was going to be made. Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers, before he died, had already raised this argument. They said he was set free in Florida, and you can't charge him. And I'll tell you guys, like inside baseball, at the time, one of the people sort of supervising the case had done the Prisco case with me, and I texted her. I said, "Oh man, is our case going to hold up in the Epstein case? Because the Epstein case is riding on our case." And she was like, "We're betting on it." But yeah, Epstein would have tried to get his case dismissed on this same basis. He would have had a better argument than Maxwell, right? Because at least he's the party, not some co-conspirator.
Right,
100%.
Yeah.
So just a quick recap of how this all came to be. Jeffrey Epstein was originally charged by the state of Florida in Palm Beach County for, I think, solicitation of a minor, something that the lead detective and the chief of police who were investigating that felt was insufficient. They did not feel that whatever he was charged with was appropriate for the kind of conduct that they had uncovered. They weren't happy with how the state's attorney was handling it. And so these local law enforcement officers went and gave this evidence to the FBI. The Southern District of Florida then opened an investigation. As far as I can tell, started, doing what FBI agents and prosecutors do. And there was an AUSA assigned to the case who ultimately, because they found so many more victims than the original state case had that spanned a longer period of time, she drafted, I believe, a 54-page indictment with 60 counts. Okay, so this is what they were, one of the prosecutors in that office was ready to charge. At this point, Epstein's lawyers wanted to meet with Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney at that time. I always like to highlight that Jeffrey Epstein's attorneys included Kenneth Starr, because I think that's an important detail.
And Alan Dershowitz.
So Alex Acosta meets with these lawyers and then essentially comes back and puts, the kibosh on this case, more or less. Stops the investigation. I think the U.S. attorney wasn't allowed to go seize his computer, which she later said would have probably just put the nail in the coffin for that case because they would have found more evidence. And then eventually ends up with agreeing to do this non-prosecution agreement, which again is not a plea deal. But the non-prosecution agreement was an agreement to not prosecute Epstein for the federal charges if he pleaded guilty to the state charges, served jail time, and then registered as a sex offender. And what was really weird, I mean, Elie, I actually remember when this all was coming out in 2019, I reached out to you because I was like,
I remember
texting and I was like, this is really weird. Like, the AUSA is going back and forth with Epstein's attorneys about the kind of language that should go in here. And is that normal? And you were like, yeah, that's not normal.
They also gave a list of the names of the victims to the defense attorneys as part of this deal, which I also
which
thought
is
was
crazy. That's crazy.
Weird.
I want to fast forward to the current moment in a second. But just can I make a practice point for all those listening, who are either prosecutors or aspire to be prosecutors or aspire to be the heads of their offices? As a practice point, if you're the U.S. attorney or the district attorney, I believe you should. I can't think of a situation in which you should meet with defense counsel on a case that your trusted, often handpicked line prosecutors are dealing with and have the ground truth on, and separately meet with those defense lawyers, and then worse, get into a deal with them without consultation with your line prosecutors. In 7.5 years as U.S. attorney, I don't think I mean, you guys, I had a lot of cases with Mimi and with Elie. If someone I had an open door policy, defense lawyers wanted to meet and talk about leniency or talk about some alternative resolution, I would always have the meeting. I can't remember turning down a meeting, but I would have you guys there. And you were supervisors. Not only have you there, we would have the line prosecutors there, so that it was all open and above board. And every once in a while, somebody would call me, who I had known from my prior life, and I wouldn't even talk substance on the phone with them. And on those occasions when I was caught off guard, which I think was like once or twice, where someone called and I thought they were calling about getting lunch or something because I'm friends with them, said I'm calling about case Y. And I just wanted to tell you, blah, I would say, okay, but you need to follow up with the line prosecutors. And I would call the line prosecutors up to my office 1 minute later and say, you should know that the attorney called and I said he has to deal with you. Do we agree with that practice point?
This is why you're no Alexander Acosta, Preet.
I did that as DA too. And I think it's...
You got to have your team. First of all, you can be...
It protects you too, because
it protects you. It also, by the way...
pull one over on you.
I mean, and the best way to lose the respect and trust of your line assistants is to do something like that, not to mention the public and your cabinet position years later. Okay. Am I correct that any defendant, at the time they are aware of the fact that they're a target, can come forward, whether it's in the SDNY or anywhere else, like Ghislane Maxwell could have, and say, I have information for you. I have a client list. I have other people I can cooperate against. I have information. And so long as they are credible, right? And we're going to talk about that. And so long as they accept responsibility for their own crimes, and so long as they can provide what we refer to as substantial assistance, that is totally in play. Can someone address the accusation or the implication that was not done with Ghislane Maxwell, and why the current interview of her, which is bizarre in a lot of different ways, is somehow a righteous and novel thing that Maurene, Comey, and others stupidly never considered?
Yeah, I mean, look, the SDNY charged a conspiracy, first of all. And so anytime you charge a conspiracy, and especially here where they had two high, significant players in this conspiracy, Epstein and Maxwell, you're going to want to find out if there are other co-conspirators. And frankly, you're going to want to cooperate Maxwell against Epstein if you can. When he was alive, he was the main guy. If Maxwell could have provided information against him, truthful information, but also, as this group knows well, I mean, it always has to be truthful. And the SDNY is pretty sort of religious, strict about the fact that it has to be full conduct. You can't come in and, just admit part of your conduct. You gotta completely fall on your sword. And, there's almost no question that Maxwell, who keeps, now claiming to be the victim, et cetera, just wasn't prepared to do that. She wasn't going to do that. And so that is why it would have never gone anywhere with SDNY. But of course they would have wanted to cooperate her, particularly against Epstein. And Todd here, the deputy AG, I don't think cares about whether she's truthful or not. And that's the main difference. That's my take.
To Mimi's point, it seems like they are building up towards some sort of finger pointing at Maurene Comey or at somebody to say they were not interested. They told Ghislane Maxwell, shut up, we don't want to hear what you have to say. I don't know the facts, but let me tell you what I do know. One, if Ghislane Maxwell had come to them, certainly at moment one when Epstein gets indicted, and they may have even approached her, that would have been the prime moment for her to cooperate. Then when she gets indicted after Epstein's dead, if her lawyer would have come to the SDNY and said she's interested in cooperating, and SDNY would have got a sense that she's actually going to cooperate for real and fully and name names and not just peck around the margins and play games, they would have brought her in. And third, nobody has a right to cooperate. I mean, we generally will hear out anyone who's willing to come forward and give us real cases, but it's not some constitutional, statutory, or moral right to come in and cooperate at all. And I think there's going to be some spinning as to what happened back then to justify this bizarre thing we saw play out recently where Todd Blanche, we all know him, but goes into, not the prison, but the courthouse and meets with her for a day and a half.
And just one other detail. Ghislane Maxwell was originally charged with 2 counts of perjury.
Yes.
For lying
Right.
during a
Forgot about that.
deposition.
Wait a minute.
about-
What are you saying? Does that affect her credibility? Well, I don't follow.
Yeah, I mean, this is, she had lied in a deposition about the nature of the crimes by Epstein, about
Wait, she lied about
her-
this stuff?
She lied about this stuff. She was actually initially charged. I believe those perjury charges were severed from her other charges when she was tried for it, because I think there was a determination that it could be prejudicial if that evidence of her perjury came out during the trial itself for her other charges. And then later, they weren't pursued because they already had this conviction. But yeah, so it's not just that, she wasn't forthcoming. She was also a liar.
So just to summarize, the Deputy Attorney General, either on his own or was instructed to go meet with an unrepentant sex trafficker, sex trafficking enabler, who is charged credibly with multiple counts of perjury, has not accepted responsibility for anything she's done, has an incentive to lie and point fingers in a way that favors the president because a pardon has been dangled. Is that a good summary?
Yes.
All right. So what?
And
so
while his Department of Justice is opposing her appeal. I
Right.
also think that
that may be in jeopardy.
Yeah, I think they might change positions.
what-
on that.
really, but
So-
they just did it last week.
Can I ask a more focused question? What is going on? Okay, no, I'm going to ask a different question, and then we'll get to the summary question. So what do you think happened in that meeting with the Deputy Attorney General? So one of my criticisms is they keep talking about transparency. We were not told who was in the meeting with the DAG. We were not told if there was someone there taking notes. We were not told the purpose of it. We were not told when we're going to hear about the results of it. What do you think happened in the meeting for multiple hours?
And we were not told what the conditions of her talking were, right? There has been some reporting that she received, what we would call, I think, proffer immunity or limited immunity. But that didn't come from Mr. Transparency, Todd Blanche, who is out there tweeting about the fact that he's, gonna meet with her and he's so transparent and wants to get to the truth.
But that immunity is standard fare when a person who is at risk of incriminating themselves agrees to talk, right?
Under a normal DOJ, yes, but nothing is.
Right.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them giving the immunity. I'm saying, this is like third-party reporting. It's not like they're saying, and here are the conditions of her talking. Like if you're going to claim, to your point, to be transparent, if you're going to claim that you got to be transparent about everything. People have to understand her incentives, which are major here. And that would include what is the immunity, what is the agreement, who is in the room, as you said, does anybody know about the case to really test her truthfulness, et cetera.
Can I ask a question? Then Elie and Asha, you can join in further. Why is he meeting with her at all when on July 7th, the DOJ and the FBI put out like a pretty sober document that said, among other things, there's no proper reason to disclose more information. To do so would be basically, peddling child pornography, because that's what some of the evidence was. That no one else remains to be charged, and that we're done here. That was like weeks ago.
Here's the answer: because the political winds shifted. And underlying all of this conversation for all four of us, ordinarily, we would spend this entire hour talking about how insane all of DOJ's conduct is, because DOJ is supposed to be independent, right? I mean, this is what we've all been talking and writing about in our books and podcasts for years. And now that principle is so far gone and so far degraded.
We don't even talk about it.
We don't even talk about it, right? Like the notion of it's just a given. Like what Todd is doing there, what Emil Bove, now apparently confirmed last night.
To you.
Right. Well, the things these folks are doing is contrary to, forget about just the time we all were there, and all of us served under Democrat, Republican administrations alike. It's so far gone that we don't even bother with the preliminaries of, by the way, this is contrary to everything DOJ is supposed to be doing as an independent institution. But the short answer to your question, Preet, is because the political winds changed. Because Pam Bondi makes this announcement. She releases this memo from the FBI to July 7th that says the following: we've gone through the entire file, 300 gigabytes. No further charges are necessary. No further public disclosure should be made. Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. And people flipped out. And that's what caused this whole thing to blow up. Yes. And that's why DOJ suddenly, and not even trying to, with no even half-assed explanation why, just went from one extreme, it's over, to a whole nother extreme of we're going to send the deputy AG in, and we'll talk later about, we're going to release grand jury transcripts, quote unquote. And they've just completely just turned on a dime, and that's it. It's politics.
To bring this full circle, Preet, to your earlier point, Todd Blanche is a deputy attorney general. Do we believe that he's actually gone through this extensive case file that has spanned multiple jurisdictions?
Of course, because he has nothing else to
people
do. That's not it's a small job, deputy attorney general.
So he goes to interview her without, I would imagine, without a deep command of the facts of this case, without the lead prosecutor, who was fired, without any FBI agents. As far as I'm aware, I'm not sure he had anyone else from the Department of Justice. Was this interview memorialized?
I don't know, but I don't know why. Why are we're not even told?
Case file? I mean,
we're not even told.
There's no record. We are, I guess, are supposed to take Todd Blanche's word for what went down, and I would be interested to know from you all. Would you ever go into an interview like this without just someone else? I mean, as an FBI agent, we weren't allowed to interview anyone without another agent present.
I think whether FBI was there or not is an unknown. Let's leave it. I'm not sure there wasn't, but I definitely am not sure there was, because I've heard conflicting things. So, but it doesn't matter, because you know what? It's probably not the case agent, to your point. It could be someone sitting there, it could be someone taking notes, but none of this is on the up and up. Can we go back for 1 second, though, and talk about, I know you've talked about it before, Preet, but firing Maurene Comey?
Yeah, so I was going to ask the question, does anybody have anything other than speculation about what went on there?
Meaning why she was fired?
Yeah.
I can speculate, but
I'll let the
circumstances speculate first.
Yeah. No, I mean, she was given no reason. I know that for a fact. She was definitely
Article 2 is not a reason,
Article
but I guess that was the authority.
The constitutional power. Also, I think it's worth saying, because I can say this with certainty, that the current U.S. attorney did not in any way try to stop this from happening, and gave very little, if any, support to her, even saying, gee, I'm sorry this happened to you. But certainly didn't try to, as I know you would have, I heard you and Joyce talk about this on one of the other podcasts, both of you would have been on the phone in 2 seconds to the AG saying, what is going on? Why are you firing one of my prosecutors without any explanation? One of my great prosecutors. Yeah. I mean, exemplary. I mean, we've all written about that. I mean, there is nothing that you can impugn in terms of misconduct that is actual and real based in fact to Maurene. I supervised her personally. You hired her. She's an amazing prosecutor. And frankly, the one who runs towards cases like this one that are really freaking hard to bring.
Well, she has that one quality, the last name.
I know.
I was going to say, I don't know her. I must have just missed her by a few months at the office. But obviously, there's two things. One is the Comey factor. Let's be real. Like, Trump is just eager to, strike back at. I've already seen a spokesperson out there for Trump say, "Oh, Jim Comey's daughter," refer to that. But the other thing is, it's obvious they're setting her up to be a scapegoat. They're going to find some typo in a file. They're going to find some, staple that's loose. And say, "Oh, she blew the whole thing. That's why Todd had to come in and fix it." Like, if that doesn't happen, I'll be shocked.
It might be more general than that. And I think they've already started doing it. And it's not just her. It's the whole SDNY that they're trying to sort of say vaguely, and we've seen this, right? Saying this talking point about they didn't dig hard enough. They didn't find the list. It's their fault. And then Trump at the same time is saying, Comey, the Jim Comey, and all these other corrupt Democratic, even though he's not a Democrat, corrupt people were controlling the Epstein files for years. Like, we can't possibly be.
That is okay. Asha,
so
you want to jump in?
Anyway,
yeah, I just wanted to say that all of these rationales, to go back to the initial, background that Mimi provided, it's really weird, right? Because Maurene Comey and the Southern District of New York obtained a conviction against
They're the only ones who did anything.
A crazy, evil sex offender. So there has to be implicit in all of this also a changing of the narrative in terms of how Maxwell is framed, that, again, this Rosetta Stone, I saw that too, Elie, and my head almost exploded when Sununu said that. So there is a changing there's going to have to be a changing of narrative. But I will also say, I'm not sure that there is so much 5D chess going on with this administration. I mean, if it was just the name, why wasn't she fired immediately after, a Bondi was put in? This is evolving in real time. I still think her firing was kind of weird. Maybe just impulsive, let's throw some red meat and maybe this will calm everybody down. Now there might be a retroactive retrofitting of, okay, we can make this all work, So
here's what's going on politically, which is driving all of the DOJ conduct, it seems to me. That conspiracy theory was spun up, led by and advocated by and perpetuated by people who are now at the top of the Justice Department in terms of the FBI. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino is the deputy director of the FBI. They said there was this material. They said there was a client list. Bondi herself adopted the position that there was a client list and spun up all the MAGA base to believe that there was some stuff that was going to be incriminating towards people they don't like. And when they said, there's nothing to see here, we're not going to disclose it, as Elie has already pointed out, all hell broke loose. So they have to make right with that. So, it seems to me everything can be viewed through the lens of the firing of Comey, the meeting of Maurene, the meeting with Ghislaine, other things that are being said in the press, the motion to the courts, 3 different courts to unseal grand jury material, is all an effort, tell me if you agree, to get right with most or all of that base who is really, really, really upset. And some portion of that base probably is looking for a way to get right with Trump. People don't like to be estranged from their loved ones for too long. And so anything they can find that can excuse the ultimate offense of the July 7th memo, that we're not going to release anything, will help them. And they have some basis for thinking, yeah, if we can blame someone else, then we're fine. Here's my question I posed this question to Ben Wittes yesterday. And maybe it's too intelligent a question for the people, who are being played in all of this. This is an administration that has moved 3 different courts to unseal grand jury material, which is a very, very, very high burden, denied by at least one judge as of the time we're recording this. There is a whole ocean of other material, notwithstanding what sitting United States senators like Senator Mullen said on television on Sunday, saying everything was grand jury. That's not true. It's a lie. There's a whole sea of information that may be, inappropriate or unwise or against norms to release, but the DOJ could release. How is DOJ explaining moving to unseal the most sensitive, judge-guarded grand jury information, and yet not revealing and disclosing all that other stuff? Go.
Can I take this one? Because this is a perfect preview of my piece for Cafe, my newsletter piece in New York Magazine.
A little promotion here.
That's coming out on Friday, which will be the day after this podcast comes out. That is the perfect exposure of why this is such BS, why this is such an artifice. It's DOJ's attempt to look transparent, to satisfy those angry voices in the MAGA base. And it's also it's an intentional, well, the part they're focusing on is the part they have no control over. So let me just explain this sort of for lay people. I'm going to use visuals off this desk here, okay?
All right, remember, this is a podcast. This is audio.
Okay.
We are on video. This is available on YouTube, listeners.
This is on video now. We've gone video live. Okay. Any given criminal file has basically two components. There is grand jury testimony. That's going to be my phone here. And then there's everything else. This is not actually to scale, which is the stapler. Okay. What percent, Mimi, Preet, Asha, of any given entire criminal file, what percent of that criminal file is going to be grand jury testimony? Just rough percent. Mimi, Preet?
I think it depends on the case. 15, 85.
Very small.
Yeah, like let's use the highest possible number. 15 is the high. I would say 5, 10, 15, but let's say 15. So this is grand jury testimony. This is 15%. This is everything else. This is 85.
If all of your documents are obtained by grand jury subpoena, then that enlarges the number.
But that's a good point, Preet. But that would be grand jury materials. The request is only for grand jury testimony, which is much narrower, right?
I see. Sure. Yeah. Right.
So,
right.
Okay, grand jury testimony, let's just say 15%, my phone here. Everything else, 85%. This 85%, the everything else, the stapler, DOJ could turn that over today. They say, oh, we'd have to redact names. Sure, redact names.
So they're continuing to insult their base, correct?
Yes. Well, I mean, people will read my article, and I don't think the base will, but it explains why it's such BS. The 15% they're trying to release is the part that A, they need a judge to approve. B, they're probably not going to get. One of the 3 judges in Florida already rejected it.
And then they can call the judges rogue and should be impeached.
Right, we tried. It's
but
all about,
guys,
we tried.
Here's the thing. The grand jury transcripts are secret.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so this is the key. The whole conspiracy is based on this idea that there is a deep state, right? That's burying stuff. That's secret. And so, the secrecy of something and then, pulling back the curtain on the secrecy is what to them is going to expose everything. So I think it's playing into that belief. And this is also why I think Trump has skated for so long on so many things that he does, because he does it out in the open. He doesn't do it secretly, usually. And I think this is why this particular issue has tripped him up, because he is trying to keep things secret. And it's sort of like, why is he doing that? Which to me is, I think, the $1 million question. What exactly is he afraid of? I mean, I think he has been able to explain away so many things. I don't think it would be shocking to anybody if he was like, yeah, I was friends with Epstein until I realized he was a creep. Yeah, I'm going to be in those files. He's going to talk about me sometimes, but so what? I think he's a creep. And then release them. So what is it that he believes that he can't explain away, that he is flailing around about? Because it, to me, is not some kind of shocker that somehow his name would be floating in. And I would think his base would be very quick to accept whatever rationalization that he puts out. So this is what confuses me the most.
You know what it reminds me of? And I made this point. I want to make it again on my show. I made it on Jen Psaki's show last week. This idea that, we're gonna put everything out in the public. We're going to disclose everything. Then Pam Bondi whispers in, allegedly, into Trump's ear, your names are in the files. Okay, we're not going to release everything. And there's this my favorite scene, even before this thing that brought it to mind, from the comedy series Veep. You guys see Veep?
I just rewatched the whole damn thing.
So tell me if I'm quoting. I haven't gone back and looked at the clip. The Julia Louis-Dreyfus character is being pursued by some scandal, and she talks about transparency, and she's being pursued by the press, and she says on camera to the press, I want full disclosure. Full disclosure is what I want. I want full disclosure. She goes into the office, closes the door, and says to her staff in a softer voice, and of course, by full disclosure, what I mean is partial disclosure, light. Isn't that this?
Of course.
Except it's not funny.
Exactly. It's the charade of disclosure and transparency. It's not actual.
And when they make their closing argument on this, whenever that may be, they're going to say two things. They're going to go, look, folks, first of all, we tried to give you the secret grand jury transcripts. Maybe one judge has said no, maybe who knows what the other two will do, but we tried to give you secret grand jury transcripts that no one else would give you. And we sent in Todd Blanche, the number 2 person, to speak with the Rosetta Stone. So we tried. That's what that's what the front they're trying to put on here.
Well, that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is they come up with stuff that, she can just say now, right?
Can I ask Elie a question? Because I consider Elie to be the resident scholar of bad conduct by attorneys general of the United States of America.
Fair.
That's what you do.
I've earned that
Elie
title.
Honig. Can you explain? I just wonder about the psychology. We talk about law, but law is often enmeshed with psychology. You have to understand why your adversary is doing what they're doing, why witnesses will or will not testify, what are the motivations to plead guilty or not. All those things. It's a lot of psychology. The Attorney General of the United States, who I believe you recited in a piece for us, was highly qualified, given what she had done in the past. She had served as an Attorney General. She certainly had of a large state and served, respectably, I think you said. So she's not an idiot. Can you explain what was going on in her head when she answered a question directly about a client list, said it was on our desk, with the clear implication it was going to be released, and then not doing that? Do you have any insight into how you make such an error or worse than an error?
Well, that was idiotic. I mean, I'm not saying she's an idiot, but that was
what's going on in the head?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to explain. So she comes into office ablaze with, oh man, we're going to blow the roof off the Epstein thing. She makes that comment. She says it's all on my desk, being ready to be reviewed. She has this whole thing where she releases these binders that labeled the Epstein files Phase 1, hands them out to these influencers. Remember, you've all seen the photo. They're proudly holding them up out from the White House, by the way. That actual release didn't happen at DOJ. It happened at the White House. The influencers then say, what is this crap? This is all stuff that's already out there. I think she just went in and she got out way too far over her skis. She must not have known what was in there. She must not have understood the peril. And so she thought she was going to come out and release this stuff and satisfy all the influencers. Then I guess she realized that she didn't have the goods, right? You could see her sort of dragging her feet at a certain point.
Do you think she went back to her office? Asha, I wonder what you think, because I know you gotta go in a second. Did she come back? She's like, okay, client file. Oh.
Right.
I mean, again, I think that this is the problem with trying to use the lingo of the conspiracy theory in the context of a reality of a case, right? I mean, I guess it's theoretically possible that there is some, document in the file that says client list, but that's probably not the case. We're talking about tens of thousands of documents across 3 investigations. Folks, this was an investigation from the Southern District of Florida. This is an investigation that spanned leading up to the charges of Epstein. Then there's the investigation leading up to the charges of Maxwell. I assume all of this is a part of the umbrella of the Epstein case, right?
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you were asking before, what could be in there? The thing that occurs to me that could be in there are documents or statements that make it quite clear that Donald Trump, whether he participated or not, but quite clear that before he broke off with Jeffrey Epstein, he knew that Jeffrey Epstein was exploiting underage women and girls and hurting them and having sex with them. And he knew it. And he didn't break off then. And he didn't do anything about it. Because that would be very bad for him. And that's the thing that I speculate is in there.
And it's a little more than speculation. I mean, there has been statements from victims who have said either in court and or publicly, if you walked into Epstein's house, you saw what amounted to child pornographic pictures on his wall, everyone knew kind of thing. And it's not just Donald Trump. It maybe plenty of high profile Democrats as well. But this idea, that they all sort of turned a blind eye to what's going on. And that's not far-fetched. that is still happening, and certainly has happened in American culture forever, that a blind eye is turned towards a powerful man abusing young girls.
Can I add to that also a little bit of incidental support for this theory? Look at Donald Trump's nonsensical, internally contradictory statements throughout this week about when and why he broke off ties with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. Please interpret that for us, Elie.
So Trump's been asked this question, and he's always sort of punted it and said, oh, he did something really bad. Now he is saying, yes, sir. He has this, he says he did something really bad. He stole my help. He hired the help. And then a reporter sort of presses him and says, was one of those helpers Virginia Giuffre? And Trump says, yeah, I think it was. Yes, that was one of them. So it begs a couple questions. First of all, the timing is bizarre here because Virginia Giuffre she worked at Mar-a-Lago. She worked in the spa at Mar-a-Lago when she was 16. Okay, if you're the owner of a spa at Mar-a-Lago at 16 and Jeffrey Epstein's poaching her, to do what? What do you think? Jeffrey Epstein's not a spa owner, folks. He's some finance guy at this point. So, what did you think?
And how much do you know about the youngest, lowest level employees at your club?
That too. And then it also makes no sense because Trump says, well, that's when I cut him off. It would have been 2000. Yet in 2002, 2 years later, Trump gives this quote to New York Magazine and this, insane profile of Jeffrey Epstein, where both Bill Clinton and Donald Trump gush about how great Jeffrey Epstein is in different ways. And Trump says, he's a wonderful guy. He likes his girls even younger than I do or something. I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like that. And then the alleged birthday book, it comes out even after that. So the timing makes no sense. The explanation makes no sense. And the problem, I think, to Mimi's point is Donald Trump, if the real reason Donald Trump cut him off is because I knew this guy was involved in horrible things with young girls, he can't say that now because that would have been years before Epstein was prosecuted. And he would have then turned a blind eye for, many years while Epstein was continuing to abuse people. So he ends up with this bizarre story that just doesn't hang together.
Also, why did he have an underage person working in his spa? I don't know. I mean, you go to a lot of spas. I go to a lot of spas. I never see young girls in there when I'm getting my facial or my massage. So yes, exactly. Not only why does he know this, but why is this resort hiring underage girls
even the language of he stole my,
he stole her.
So
very proprietary.
No, it's proprietary. Yeah. Exactly. That's
and the timeline doesn't match to Elie's point also because I believe Virginia Giuffre said that she left in 1999 or 2000, and his relationship with Epstein continued until I think at least 2004. The key to all of this also, Preet, that of what you're saying that might be in there, we have to remember that this is also very well before pre-Me Too, right? I mean, we have these norms now where things like that, there has been a change in social culture. Harvey Weinstein, people turned a blind eye to that too. They knew what was going on there.
Larry Nassar,
I
think is a prime example.
There was a way in which a lot of men felt emboldened to act very openly. So there would have been instances where there was not shame or people trying to hide this because they felt that they would never be accountable.
It's been very tolerated, more than tolerated, accepted.
We shall see. Mimi Rocah, Asha Rangappa, Elie Honig. That was a real treat. Thanks so much. Folks, make sure you don't miss any episodes. Hit that subscribe button like you mean it.